My name is David Osborne, and we would like to welcome you to the station, live and direct from Virginia, with the illest group of students that I know that are right here in the building. Make some noise. We're so happy that you all decided to join us today. We're doing something very special. For the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about the idea of relationships. We call this series All of Me. And so we've been talking about love, lies, and labels, and we had some phenomenal discussion about this all month long. Today, we're doing an unfiltered discussion. We've been hearing your questions from all of your friends, and we want to make sure that we answer them the best way that we can. This is going to be something special. Send it out, retweet it, hashtag it, do whatever you got to do. Send it to somebody. It's going to be awesome. But I could not do this without the best person in my life, the person that rescued me. I would gladly give all of me to my beautiful wife, Lydia. Please make some noise for Lydia Osborne.
Hello.
Thank you. All right, yeah, you can sit down. Sit down. Good morning, everybody. As I said, we're going to be talking about all things uncovered about relationships, and this has been an incredible series because normally what happens is we'll do some preaching, and you guys will break out into your tribes, and we'll have some of those discussions. And what I thought was, as I've been hearing you all have having some like crazy discussions about anything related to sex and relationships. And for the viewing audience right now, we only have high school students and 8th graders in here. And so we wanted to make sure that the content was age appropriate because you all had some raw questions. And so before we get started, like, it doesn't make any sense if you all don't understand us and kind of how we came to be. And then we'll get into that real quick. And babe, do you mind? I guess maybe we can start out with like telling like how we got started and all that stuff. And
You should start.
Okay, all right. She says I always take too long because we're like people, like we'll be like in a sushi restaurant and like people like will ask us about how we came together, and then like before, I'm not even kidding, like we were like last week, like somebody was crying in the sushi restaurant when we were telling them our story, like, and it happens all the time. So we kind of got it down, but I'm a little long. So basically what happened, you guys, I was 16, 17 years old, doing my thing, wilding, doing my own thing, crazy. And then I recommitted my life to Jesus. I said, hey, God, I'm going to follow you. Fast forward, I was in this relationship with this girl. We were doing everything that you would do if you didn't follow the Bible, and we did everything. And so I went to this conference. My dad made me go. I was on a college tour all the way down to Atlanta, went all the black schools. I was crazy on that whole trip. My dad said, you're going to church, and it was a youth day thing that we were doing here. I had no idea who preached, and I didn't care. I was like some of us sometimes just sitting back. And what came to happen was the pastor he made sense. He was talking about hip hop and music, and I could relate to him. But he said, I'm not hearing nothing from Virginia. I'm not hearing anything about what's happening in the 757, and that struck me. And so I rededicated my life to the Lord like that Saturday. I went to the altar. I was crying for literally like 2 to 3 hours. It was 3 hours because we were going all the way through the break. It was like 2 sessions. All the way through the break, I was bawling. I was there. They had to extend the session to go forward. So I remember at one point when I was like at the altar, like bawling, just like, I looked over to the left, and there was this girl. There was only 2 people. There was me and then this other girl. And I was like, oh, that's the pastor's daughter. And that's all I thought about. She was crying too. So I didn't think anything of it. And so fast forward that year, later on, I read a book called I Kissed Dating Goodbye. It was by a guy named Joshua Harris. And he basically said in the book that, God has a perspective on relationships and dating. And he said that dating should never happen. You should not date at all. You should not date at all. And so by the time I finished reading the book, I said, you know what? I'm not going to date another woman until she's my wife. So fast forward, I went to college, went to D.C., and all of a sudden, actually it wasn't as fast forward, it was senior year. High school. My senior year of high school, you're junior, she's a year younger than me. I got a tap on my shoulder at church. I'm just doing my thing at church, and I get a tap on my shoulder, and it's one of those guys that has the earpiece in their ear, is one of the security dudes. And they're like, hey, the pastor wants to meet with you. So I was like, okay. So I went to his office, and we went through this back corridor, and it was like, well, what's going on? And at that point, we really didn't have a relationship beyond just Sunday. And so I would go up to the office, and I'm sitting down, and I'm nervous because there's like tea in an office, and I didn't drink tea, and it was like nice chairs and furniture and stuff. And so I sit down, and I'm like looking at all these books and these pictures of Bishop Macbeth, and he walks in. He says, "Hey, son," and I'm like, I'm all nervous and stuff, and he's like, I'm wondering, my wife has been watching you, and I'm wondering if you would be interested in taking my daughter to her ring dance, because I lived in Kecoughtan, I lived in Hampton, so I went to Kecoughtan. Yeah, so mine is just as whack as yours was.
I went to Hickory.
Hickory, yeah. So Hickory and Kecoughtan, two whacknesses combined. And then, so I was like, yeah. I say, sure, I'll do this. Now, this is the thing. I used to party. I loved to dance and that, and then the girls. And so I had made this strong commitment. I'm not going to date nobody until she's my wife. I don't listen to like what I would call at the time secular music. I didn't do any of that stuff. So I said, okay, cool. So I called Lydia on the phone. Her dad gave me her cell phone number, and I called her up, and we spoke later on that afternoon. And I was like, hey, my name's David. She's like, yeah. That's how it went.
Okay, you want me?
Yeah, pick it up from there.
Okay, so it was 11th grade. So David ended up taking me to my ring dance, and so he comes, picks me up, and everything, and so he doesn't dance the entire night, the entire time.
Not even to Thriller.
He didn't dance to anything. So I'm sneaking on the dance floor, like, man, my date's whack, man.
But tell you were gassing me, like you were gassing me to your friends before.
Well, okay, before I was saying, I got this guy, he's taking me and stuff, but so he gets there and he doesn't live up to these expectations. He's not like partying and stuff. So I'm like, man, and for me, to give you an idea of where I was at, being a pastor's daughter, and at this point in my life, I was like, man, I don't want anything to do with church. Basically, I go to church, but my lifestyle is definitely not the same as what I would do on Sunday. So I was thinking somebody near my age would have the same idea. We're just going to party, have a good time. But David didn't do anything. He sat like this.
Straight up. I was hardcore, y'all.
Yeah, he was real extreme, I say. So we were going two different directions. So afterwards, we left, and I ended up texting my friend, girls, how we
pause. So we got to talk about before we get there, though. Okay, so I go to pick Lydia up at what I think is a mansion. And so I pick her up. I have like a Hyundai Elantra that had a bunch of like chrome, like when you got guys that have like chrome wheels, like real chrome wheels. I had the chrome hubcaps. I put like chrome taping all over my car just to like fake it like it was expensive. And so I go there, and my door doesn't work either, so I have to go out and open the door for her. I'm at this, like, Lydia walks down the stairs with like a Chanel bag.
It wasn't even,
she was a junior, like wearing a Chanel bag, and she walked down. I was like, man, she looked good. But it was like, I wasn't like necessarily interested like that. Yeah. So we was just like, okay, we're gonna do this. So we go to eat. We go to Lynn Haven Fish House, okay? I'm 17 years old. We go to Lynn Haven Fish House. Lydia does something I'd never heard of before. The guy comes over and he says, hey, how may I help you? What would you like to start out with? So I'm ready to order my entree. Lydia says,
I just wanted an appetizer.
She wanted to get an appetizer. Now, again, this is like first date,
Lynn
Haven Fish House. We never
time.
even like had this nothing. So I'm like, number one, I know this meal is going to be like $60, okay, fellas. and then she orders the appetizer, which is like some like calamari, and I'm like, I never even looked at the calamari. I didn't even order an appetizer. What are you talking about? So we go there. The bill comes up to like $98. I'm 17, y'all, and this ain't even my situation. Like, this isn't even my thing.
I didn't offer anything.
She didn't pay, of course. No money. Yeah, so I'm like, okay, so I just eat that cost. I probably have like $23 left, I think.
So we go, and then we take pictures, right? And we go to the dance, and I wanted like the deluxe pack, that had like all this stuff.
Again, this ain't it.
I did not pay for it.
This is not my thing. This is not my situation. She orders the biggest package. I have to pay for most of that as well.
So then, afterwards, so then the dance, he wasn't dancing and stuff, and I text my friend. I was like, man, this is whack. Can you meet us we were supposed to go to IHOP and hang out. So I was like, just meet us there, and then we can play it off like I just ran into you, like, hey, girl, and he can go, and I can just hang out with you. So, and I didn't tell him I did that
I didn't even know
until
this like a year
couple
ago.
years
Like
later.
I just found this
He
part
just
out.
thinks that I ran into my best friend. I just
I
couldn't
saw, yeah,
tell
so we
him.
get, I'm like, oh, your friend's here. I was like, oh, okay.
And
Okay,
she had,
cool.
a seat for us. Like, yeah, let's go sit with them. Let's go sit over there. The interstate's right here. When
Yo,
we're
this is where the
finished.
drama starts, okay?
Yeah.
From here, it started right here.
So from there on, so we would talk back and forth my senior year in high school, and then I went to North Carolina State. I was on a soccer scholarship, so I went there for school, and David would come to my games. So he would show up at.
Okay, Fat, start right there.
I see he gets real detailed.
All right, so after my freshman year of college, I hadn't dated anybody for a couple years, and I'm like, man, all my friends were like had relationships and stuff, and so I was just like, at that point, I was like, God, who's my wife? Who's gonna be for me? Because I had made this decision, I'm not gonna date nobody, and that was difficult. I went to Howard University in D.C. and like, that was hard. That was very, very hard. And also the dorm that I lived in, I was myself and my boy, who's like my brother now. We were the only like freshmen in this upperclassmen dorm, and it was off campus. So like it was like 12 blocks away in Northwest DC. So I didn't party, I didn't do that stuff. I wasn't like wilding or whatever. In the meantime, like I'm like, man, well, who's for me? And then summertime comes after my freshman year, and I remember just like literally like 3 weeks later, like I'm vacuuming at the crib, right? And all of a sudden, like I feel like I heard the Lord say, "Lydia's your wife," and I was like, "What?" Because at that time, like there was no other girl that was even in the picture for me. You know what I mean? But my feelings really kind of started growing. But I was just like, I can't date. Because I read the book. The book said you can't date, and so like I didn't tell anybody. But then I felt like I heard God say, like, Lydia's your wife. And I remember I was vacuuming, and I heard, and I was like, dang. So I called up my boy that I told y'all about. I was like, yo, Lydia's my wife, yo. And she's like, well, David, it's like, you're like 20 years old, like, you know what I mean? Like, so anyways, that was my after into my freshman year. You're going to your senior year, and then you graduate, go to your freshman year. She goes to state, I'm in DC.
So we would still talk and everything while I was at school. So we would have like 5-hour-long conversations on the phone. I mean, we would get started around, 8 o'clock, talk till middle of the morning, and we're just talking about life. And but we were never. I never wanted to be in a relationship with David. So for me, like David said, I was going crazy. Everything you could wild out and do in school, that's what I wanted to get into and I planned to get into. And so David, for me at that point, was more of accountability, and I didn't want that. I wanted to go do whatever I wanted to do, and I didn't want to think about what God would think, really about what I was doing at that point. And but we would have these conversations about God, about life, and so
I think that was, and so we'd have these conversations. So I'm thinking, now listen, I have strong feelings for her. I think I heard God said she's my wife. I'm thinking, okay, it's gonna that means we'll start dating like next week, right? And that was the week. It ended up being 6 years.
Yeah, so was, for David, was back and forth of, I would have girls, how you do, when somebody likes you, but you're not really sure, but you enjoy their company. And so I'd come home from school, I'd hang out with David, and then it was like, all right, I'm going back to school. I would sub-love with David when I came home. He would buy me stuff, David bought me.
It won't just stuff, y'all. Okay, So, like, let's start with the first situation. So, like, I knew she loved, like, fatheads or DCs, Air Force Ones, wherever you're from, uptown.
Okay, we're talking like year 2000.
Yeah, so way back. So she's like, I see it like, man, she has things. So I'll go to get her, like, these, like, gum sole, like, shoot black. They were, like, fresh. And so she had that. I got her some clothes from, like, the
but he
mall.
wouldn't get me one pair. He'd get me 2 pairs of shoes. Or he'd get me
kicks or whatever. Like, I always have. And then, like, when Valentine's Day, birthdays, all that, the holidays, all that.
Like the biggest bouquet of flowers literally could ever imagine.
They were $125.
Yeah, and he would show up out of nowhere with flowers, and where he's not my boyfriend. I'm talking to other people. I'm like, why does he keep coming?
Talking is a loose word.
Yes, loosely, yes.
I'm sorry. Okay, so
So I was not moved by these things, and people are like, girl, he is fine. Why don't you like him? So I'm like, I'm just not into him. I'm just not, it's not he's not my type. But so it would go back and forth, and
so like one time, for instance, like she came, like she had a game in College Park in Maryland, University of Maryland, and I was in D.C., so I was like, okay, I'm gonna go see her at her game. So I got her like a little shirt from the bookstore
yeah.
at my school, and so now listen, like if you're college, you have no money, so I took like this hour-long trip out to College Park. I have no money. I get out there, I go to the game, I get there like. I think I got there right before the first half was over. She's playing soccer. I'm waiting there by myself, I'm at a soccer field, you know what I mean? Like, what the heck? And
then after the game, I'm going to the bus, and David's there. So I see him, and I'm like, oh, gosh, David's here, okay. So David, he walks up, and he's like, hey, and I'm like, hey, how you doing? And so he's like, he got me this shirt, and I'm like, it's an extra large, I'm thinking, well, why you give me an extra large shirt? And so I talked to him for like not even 2 minutes. I'm like, all right,
it was
so
literally like
I gotta go.
2-3 minute conversation.
And then I would get on the bus. Like I was rude. I was just really rude to him. I would, I wouldn't give him the time of day, basically.
So then one time, like she called me again. This stuff happened all the time, like just getting dissed and like egged on, like all day. So. She called me and she was crying one day because she was sick, and I was like, hey, like what's wrong? And she was like, she was I was probably just stressed or something, and so I'm like, all right, well I'm coming down there. So she was like, okay. So at the time I have a job. I have to come here and do the church stuff. So I left my job at 6, came to do the church stuff till 11 here at church. And then I talked with her dad, and he was here at a meeting as well. So I said, hey, I'm going to go down and see Lydia. And he said, okay. So he gave me a little bit of gas money. So I drive down to North Carolina, balling down there, like, get there in like record time, 2 hours. I actually get a speeding ticket on my way down. And so I get there around 1:30, right? And so the way her dorm where she was at the time, like they have like the fence, so like you can't get in. So there's like nobody can get in unless you got the key or whatever. So like there's like this like window, like this opening this big at the top of the door. So like I climb up and like slither
he jumped
through
there,
the door. I mean the
got
little
through
thing.
The gates and everything.
It's now probably 1:45.
2 in the morning.
Right.
So I hear this at my door. So I come to the door and I open the door.
She says this, I'm not
It's
kidding.
exactly what I said to him. I said, what are you doing here? It's like, and face just like not excited, not surprised, to see him. I was like, what are you doing here? So he comes in.
I was embarrassed at that moment.
He comes in, and I had, it was the sports, dorm. So I had a big enough room. So we sat down, talked for maybe 30 minutes,
right.
And then I was like, yeah, you should go get a hotel or something, So he went and got a hotel room, and then he calls me and says, I'd love to take you to brunch in the morning. Do you have time for that? And I had nothing to do, but I was like, no, I don't have time I don't have time for that.
So I drove back to VA.
He drove back. So literally he drove 2-3 hours, got a speeding ticket, and then had 30 minutes of time and then drove back. So at this point, it had been that kind of stuff for probably 4 years. Like just straight 4 years of just me, just, yeah.
Bad. Valentine, I got her a diamond bracelet.
He got me a diamond bracelet for Valentine's Day.
I was going so hard. And she just like, she looked at it, she kept it in her trunk, and then
I didn't
to
even
this
wear
day,
it.
she doesn't even have it.
I don't
like,
even
I'm
have
so
it.
frustrated if she don't have it to this day. So in that time, I'm getting tired of doing the roller coaster thing, because like I said, we would get together and we would talk, but it was never romantic. And I was like, what is this? And there were other women like that were interested. It wasn't like I was just this loser. You know what I mean? Some of my guys that are here tonight, they'll say there were other people. And so I just got tired of doing that. And so, long story short, I started dating this other girl, and she was a great girl, good girl, but I had known that, like, I thought Lydia was my wife, but I was just tired of going up and down, you know. And so I talked with some of my counselors, some people that I look to like tell about what's going on in my life. I said, hey, I'm interested in this girl. And they were like, yeah, you know, because Lydia's kind of crazy. You don't even know like what's going on. And everybody said yes, but Pastor Janine. I told Pastor Janine, I sat with her. I said, hey, there's this girl I'm interested in, blah blah blah. And she was just like, no, this is not God. She's I don't know if it's coming from like a pastor or the mom of the girl that I've been trying. And so anyway, so that was it. So ended up dating in a relationship, first one in like years. And so in this relationship, and maybe you can tell what was kind of going on with you.
So with
during
me,
that
this
period.
is what, about 5 years later, I was going into my senior year in college, and that party life, and the relationships I was in, horrible relationships, just emotionally abusive relationships with these guys who were just treating me ridiculously. And here's this guy that was really sweet to me the whole time. And then those things started changing, as I'm saying, as if I basically was like, God, I need you. Like, I don't feel like doing this anymore. I don't want this lifestyle. I'm tired of the pain that comes with it. And so I just rededicated my life to God and said, I'm going to live for you. And literally when that happened, I just looked at my relationships totally different. And the first thing I did was call David. And I remember I was at the mall and I had a promise ring. I was getting my promise ring fixed. I'd already broken that promise. So I wasn't living a life of abstinence, but I was getting it fixed, and I thought of David, and I said, I'm going to call him. So I called David. He didn't pick up. I knew he was in a relationship, but I wanted to share this with him, and so I called and I said, David, I left a message, and he said,
okay, pause it. So I'm in a very bad condition. I was working at like Dillard's women's shoes. Like I was doing stuff here, got fired here, started working at Dillard's shoes. Like, so I'm like stocking boxes in the stock room and people, I'm like, what the heck is going on with my life? Like, why am I boxing shoes at Dillard's, And so I remember I'm downtown at Harry's Barbecue. There used to be Harry's, if anybody remembers that. So it's Harry's Barbecue, and I'm sitting there, and I get this voicemail, and I'm like, Lydia called. Like, we hadn't talked in a year.
And I hardly ever called him.
Yeah, she never called me. That was girls, fellas. I mean,
yeah, I didn't call
either one. Y'all know when the one is chasing and the other one is running. Like, I was chasing, she was running. So it was never like, texting me out of. It was never that. Ever. She never talked sweet to me. It was never nice. It was always just like, it was just always like that. So I get up. I'm like, Lydia, and then she.
So I told him. I said, I just wanted to thank you for just the friendship you've given me. I wanted to apologize for how I treated you and how I talked to you. And out of everybody that I've been with here, out of everybody I had been with, that you treated me better than any other guy that I talked to. And I just wanted to tell you that I thank you, I appreciate you, and I hope you can forgive me, and hope all is well.
I could never, in a million years, I could have never have imagined. Y'all see, my wife is sweet, and y'all think, oh, she's so nice. And y'all, my wife was ruthless to me. Like, I'm not kidding. Y'all, I'm not kidding. That just shows you how much you can change. She was like, man. So I'm like, not even used to hearing her talk like this. So I'm just like, what? So I call her up, and I'm like, yeah, and so I'm just kind of just listening. So then later on, like I said, I'm still in a relationship. I think she has something going on, North Carolina, and so I call her up, and I'm like, hey, I basically like given you everything, like for all these years, and I never got anything back, and I've put it all out there, so I need you to tell me like, where you're at. So then, and this is a point, she had never told me about all the stuff that was going on for these 4, 5, 6 years. While she was away, and some of the craziness that had happened. I would have dreams about it sometimes, so I'd just be praying for her. I'd just be like, God, please just bring Lydia to you, bring her to you, let her fall in love with you, let her purpose in you just be found. Mm-hmm. And I knew I didn't know like details, but she'd come home and her lips are purple, and You know what I mean? You know what you're doing when you got purple lips, you know? So it's like, you know, but I didn't know the details of what was happening. And so she basically, on that 6-hour conversation that we had that night, she told me everything that had happened and everything that had gone on for all those
That's
times.
how reckless I'd been.
Yeah, and how crazy it was. And so at that point I still was, because I was just still hurt, you know what I mean, from like all the years, and just like, you know, I was still hurt. But that moment after that conversation, that's when it, like, my heart started to like turn back to her. And basically what happened after that is I was in this relationship and I just got torn. Like, my love for Lydia that had always been there just came back. And I was just like, you know, I can't, you know, I'm not in this relationship. I'm in a relationship and it's just not, I can't give you everything that you want because I'm torn right now. So that relationship what I had ended, and then like all of a sudden, like my sister calls me up and she's like, David. I'm like, what? She's like my youngest sister, because Lydia was always like a big sister to my sisters. I have 3 sisters, and she was like that to 2 of them mainly. I had one that was skeptical of Lydia because she had seen all the drama that Lydia put me through. So Lydia came kind of back into the picture, and my sister was kind of like, you know what I mean, like, what you doing here, you know? And yeah, so she called. She said, David. I said, what? And she's like, I have to tell you something. She was like, Lydia has strong feelings for you. And I was like, nah. I said, no, it's not. I was like, y'all are lying. I was like, no way. So she's like, yes.
Yeah, because I ended up calling one of his sisters because basically once I was able to understand the love God had for me, it just changed my perspective on how I saw him. So all of a sudden he went from somebody I wasn't paying attention to like, I love him. Like, I remember exactly where I was driving when it happened, and I said, I am in love with David. And I called his sister and I told her, I said, I love your brother. I am in love with him. And so she, you know, of course, she can't really hold anything in, and ends up telling him. And at that point, I really didn't know where it was going to go. But I just knew that my heart was overwhelmed with this love for him that I did not have before, and it wasn't like anything else I'd experienced. So
she has, like, her parents have like their anniversary ceremony, and so I'm with this girl, and Lydia, like, she's like one of the groom or bridesmaids. She walks out there, it's like 10,000 people, and I just see her and I'm just like, and the girls look at me like, you better not look. So I'm just like keeping it straight, you know what I mean? I'm like, dang, she's looking good, you know. And then she has her graduation party. You're graduating from school. She has a graduation party. Me and a boy of mine, we go to the graduation party. My family was there as well. So me and my boy Julian, we walk out to like go like get something, I don't know. And then so this is me, you can tell this is kind of funny.
So I thought David was leaving, so of course now I'm like pressed. I'm just checking out David everywhere he's going. So I'm looking at him at the party, I'm like, where is he going? I see him getting up. So my friend was like, go get him. So I run out of that ballroom to like find David. So I'm running, and right as I'm coming around the corner, David's walking back because he wasn't leaving, he just had walked out. So he sees me. I literally, like a movie, I just kind of like run into him, and he sees me.
She's running, y'all.
So now, of course, girls, he sees me like, oh, shoot. I was like, dang.
Running, yo.
I was like, so I look real thirsty, basically, just real pressed now.
Right.
And he caught me looking.
I'd never seen her like that. She was all cool
I
and everything.
never pursued him, now
it was crazy. Yeah.
he caught that, and
so fast forward, like we start summertime,
so
like
we start dating.
We start like hanging out in groups. We had, because we couldn't be officially. We had to take like 3 months, so we get it official. I get the ring. That's like June. I get the ring. We start dating officially in September. I buy the ring in November. I propose to her in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Right
outside of
December,
Central Park.
right outside of Central Park. In December, we get married the following September. So literally,
so it was,
go ahead.
7 years.
It was 7 years from the moment that her parents asked me to take her to her ring dance to the month that we got married.
That we got married is literally 7 years later. So it was 5 years of him pursuing me and getting rejected, and then the last year of me actually.
That'd be 6 years. Oh yeah, 5 and 6. Who's counting? I mean, it don't matter. Yeah, so that's our story, you guys. That's what we came to be. We got 3 banging kids right now.
And we'll be married almost 7 years
We'll be
now.
7 years in September. So, thank you. So that's our story, and we both have different experiences. When we got married, neither one of us were virgins. We had both given ourselves to people prior to getting married, and so that's kind of what's happened. So now, kind of given what we've shared, I want to hear some of you guys' questions. I want to get into them. So we're going to get started. I got like a lot of them, so I'm going to just jump right into them. He said, "Do you feel like it's necessary to be in a relationship?" And by that, I'm assuming that it's a romantic relationship. Do you feel like it's necessary to be in a relationship? You can start.
No, I think there's a lot of things to consider in that question. When you're saying necessary, do you need it? Like, how some people just need to be with somebody, and that I think is unhealthy. If you can't just be by yourself, you need somebody. You might want to reevaluate your reasons for being in a relationship. Do you just you see everybody else in a relationship, you feel the pressure to want to be in a relationship because everyone else is? I think it's what do you want? Like, what are you looking for? What degree of relationship? I don't know if you want to go into that.
Yeah, I think these are good questions. There's a couple other ones that are calling in the same line. It's like, should I be in a relationship? Is it necessary? What if I don't want one? What if I do? I think it's like this, that when you start to get around like 16, I would say like 16, you being with someone romantically, like that's a real issue, because it starts to come up, of course. But then, like I said, I always joke with you guys, like like when you're in middle school, like, I mean, where you going? You ain't going nowhere. So I mean, okay, but you ain't going nowhere. So but as you get older, like, the stakes of what you're giving away get higher, you know what I mean? And I think that's where, like, okay, in a relationship, a romantic relationship, there's so much that could be given away. And that's, I think, when you have to start evaluating, okay, what is it that I am going to give away, and then who am I going to give it to? And so Lydia and I, we had different experiences, like before I really started following Jesus. Like, I did, like, if the girl, like, we were there, like, we hung out, and then we started dating, and then she don't like when I do this, I'm gonna do it anyways. Like, it was going down. She hates that. It was going down, So what happened, though? This is what happened. This was crazy. When I decided to follow Jesus, I was in this relationship with this girl, and she was doing what we were always doing, and I was like, I can't do this anymore, because I'm trying to go in a different direction. And because she was going one way and I was trying to do my Jesus thing, it just didn't work anymore. Like, it's just because she would be like, oh, why don't I'm like, nah. And every time we hung out, then we end up doing stuff that I didn't want to do anymore. And I feel guilty and all this other stuff. And so I was like, you know what, this is going to have to end. So for a long time, it wasn't necessary for me to have a relationship. I mean, if I was the dude that I was, like, when I was 16, when I was in DC, I'd have been crazy. Like, it would have been crazy. So for me, it wasn't necessary until much later. Maybe you can speak about, the necessity of all that. You know what I mean? As a high school student.
As for me in high school, I just thought that you had to be in one. I don't know if ladies have that pressure. You're just like, well, I need to be with somebody. I can't be by myself. Like, nobody wants to be alone. And so you find yourself in these relationships and giving of yourself in ways that you wouldn't if you had more security. And the thing is, where does that security come from? It can't come from the relationship. It can't come from that guy, because then you'll find yourself with different guys, because they're not going to be able to give you what you really need, because what you need is just a pure exchange of love. And when you get that from God and you realize that He's the only one that can fill that place in your heart, then you don't feel that you need to be with someone. So when someone comes up and they want to take you out or do something, you're not so needy and feeling like, oh yeah, I'm just going to do this because I need someone. It's, you can think through those things. Like, yeah, well, no, I'm good with that. I don't need that, or I don't have to go out with you. I'm good by myself. And it's not a arrogant type of thing. It's just that you're just confident in just who you are and who
You're
God
like
is to you.
content. You're
Yeah,
good.
you're content.
You're
Yeah.
good. Yeah, I think that was the thing too. It's like when you're like content, meaning you're straight, like you have this solid confidence in who Jesus is and who you're supposed to be. Then there's certain people that just are not going to line up with that part of your life. It's like if you know he's about this, but you're trying to do this, like just by decision that you've already made, it ain't gonna line up. You know what I mean? And I think that's what started happening with me. And then once first make that decision, then it's like, okay, well, how do I do that? And so each of us have to do that at a different phase. For some people, it happens much earlier. Like I talked to some of my friends, they're like, man, like I was a virgin before I got married. And I was like, man, I wish that was our story, because
Yeah.
there's things that I gave to other women that I could now not give to my wife. Mm-hmm. And the other part of that too is that does impact
It does.
your current relation. That'll impact your marriage.
It will.
If you I don't know if whatever where you're at as far as your purity, when you give your purity away, it plays into what you're going to do in the future. Now the beautiful thing about that is that God is a restorer and a healer, and he'll heal what's happened. But there's one question up here that says, are soul ties real?
They're very
Are
real.
soul ties real? And what are soul ties? People say soul ties are, this, I gotta be with this person because, they were meant for me. Well, when you have the act of sex is literally, I can get even more graphic if can I talk about no? Yes,
Just
okay.
start and then
Just
I'll
okay.
take
All
it.
right. She's gonna let me know when it's too much. Yeah. So the act of sex, the Bible says this about a covenant or an agreement. He said there can be no forgiveness of sin without the remission of blood. So blood has to be spilled in order for a covenant to be agreed upon. That same principle is taken out in the act of sex. It's like if you're a virgin, if you're a woman, there's a physical thing that happens where blood is released, and that is a sign of covenant. And so when you do that with someone who you don't have relationship with beyond y'all just chilling or y'all just hanging out, or he really loved me but we don't have a ring, then you are tying yourself to someone who does not have the same commitment that a marriage does. And when you do that multiple times, and it's not just it's not just penetration, it's like when you engage in every act of sex, the Bible says, he says, flee from fornication. Fornication just means porneia, Pornia. That's the Greek word for it. That's where we get the word porn from. But porneia is any sexual act outside of marriage between a man and a woman. And so when you engage in those things, Jesus was descriptive when Paul was writing this thing down. He was like, they were talking about, can you have sex with an animal? Can you have guys and girls, guys? So Paul just said porneia, which means every act of sex. If it's not in a relationship between a man and a woman in marriage, it's fornication. And so when you do that with multiple people, what happens is you tie yourself to them. And then when the person comes around who you're actually, God created them for you. You have to go through all this drama to cut those ties off and then cut those memories off. And because the Bible says this about sexual sin. He says you sin against your own body when you do sexual sin. And so what's different about, like, if I steal something from you, like if I take your phone and I'm going to go and, put my own thing on, I take it away from you, I can always return that phone back. I can give you that back because it's something outside of the body. But when I'm with a woman who's not my wife, or if you're with somebody and you guys aren't married, unfortunately, you're doing something within your own body that you can't get rid of the memory. You can't get rid of the feeling. You can't get rid of where you were at. You can't get rid of the song that you were listening to. You can't get rid of those things. And so now you're, 10 years later, you get married, and that person is still in your memory and in your conscious, and you got to go through all this stuff to kind of get right, when God always intended it like Adam and Eve, to just be between a man and a woman. So yeah, that was a long answer to a lot of questions, but does that make sense?
No, and I think that's good because the thing is you don't see it like that when you're, hormonal, when you're in high school, you're just like, we're just having a good time. This is nothing. It's just for tonight. We just do what we can do for tonight. And that's just completely, that's not true. It's just not going to happen that way. And when you're, like David said, when you are with your husband or wife, however many years later, then you really want to give them all of you, all of me. But I can't give you really all of me because I've given away parts of me, and those things still, like he said, then God needs to restore those, and he can do that. So it's not like it's too late. He will be able to do that, but then that's the thing you wouldn't have to deal with, and that's the part that God doesn't want you to have to struggle with, because it's already, we see, it's already hard in marriage, the divorce rate and things like that. It's already hard for people anyway, but God's like, see, you're going to have to work at knowing each other, but then if you bring in all these other elements, then there's even more stuff. We got to work through who he hurt you and she hurt you and she did this to you and he did this and what. I mean, you just got to work through all of that on top of regular relating to one another.
And I think that's part of the reason why it's like, somebody asked this, is why does having a relationship look so appealing? And I think it does because it seems like everybody's doing it. Like, why would you not be in a relationship? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, why not? And I think it does because, number one, I think media, of course, makes it feel like something. It's not like, if you followed the advice and instruction of the songs that we listen to, it's funny, like I was listening to somebody, like I was this artist, they wrote this song, and I was like, dang, like, he really gets down like that, right? But then I saw him and he's married. It's like, well, you can't get down like that if you're married. And he's like, oh, no, it's just music. It's just music. So I was like, oh, okay. But we don't always think that. We think like that's like real life. So then we like make our moves on the girl based off of what this dude is singing about. Like, yeah. And it's like, that ain't even real, yo.
And then the girls make their whole thing about what they're hearing, and I think that is a deception for women, is that you see all of these things and feel like I've got to perform for him. I've got to, if I wear this, if I do this, then that equals I'm going to get the outcome of a great relationship. And the performance model is very distorted, and that's the lie that if we're getting fed as women, especially your body image. If my body looks like this, if I dress this way, if my hair is this way, and it's not even based on a relationship, it's just based on objectifying myself in the relationship and how can I be the best object to him. It's not about being a helpmate, is what God calls us as women, as to help each other, but we're already saying, I just want to be a good object for you. I take away my brain, I take away my input, my passion, my love for you. I'm just giving you an object.
And work for me.
And that's
twerk for me.
And that's all I want. Yeah. And we take that into our relationships. So when he doesn't give you the response you want, when your hair is laid right or when you have this cute outfit, then you automatically get upset.
Freaking
like
out.
You don't love me. And the thing is that we're just still thinking, we're still performing. That's what we need to get our minds out of, this whole performance thing. It took me a long time to realize, because I used to wear like a bunch of makeup, like a lot. I would play soccer in makeup, and it took me a while when David, he just loved me, just
had nothing to do with any of that stuff.
If my hair and stuff wasn't together and makeup, he's like, yeah, why not? Let's go hang out. Why do you need makeup? And I was like, that's not true. You really don't believe that. Like, you really don't see me that beautiful. And it's hard for you to get through with, if you're given images of you look like this, you look like this, you look like this, and someone who just loves you for you, then you kind of just dispel all of that, all those lies.
And part of it is too, and this is where we'll kind of go here for a second, that when when you've been through like experiences that are painful, that are hurtful, if you don't have a dad, whether you're a guy or a girl, and you don't have a father in your life, so there's not a man. If you're a guy, there's not a man telling you like how to be a man and how to be around women and what you need to be. It's even 10 times harder, and it's the same thing for the woman. If you don't have a father that's telling you you're beautiful and telling you you're awesome, then those are some effects. But then also because we know that the stat that 1 in every 4 women, and sometimes it's even dropping down to 1 in every 3, and 1 in every 6 men have been sexually abused, then the abuse lens, you start seeing things through what's like distorted.
Yeah.
And so a lot of what we even see in media is distorted off of like abuse. So like if you want to be the girl that like dances in front of him and guys, and so we just sit back like just yeah you got to do this for me and just sit there, then what happens is she gets this idea that I have to perform, and you get this idea that yeah, you were created for me. And both of those things are lies.
Yeah.
Because a real man goes 110 for the woman that he loves, and will go as hard as he has to in order to make sure that she is who she is, a princess, a queen, a diamond, like all that. And so, but that's not because what she looks like. That's because God created her that way. She's created in the image of God. And that's what I saw like in my wife. You know, I was like, she's incredible. Like, she's awesome. And so, yeah, I'll do all that stuff.
And one thing you made me think of, one thing I always admired about David was that he has this thing, I guess the guys, I don't know if guys call it, it's this second look thing, like when a girl goes by, or, you know, you don't do that, you know, that double look or whatever it is.
They probably don't. They do. Yeah, most of y'all just look. It's probably not the second look, but most of you look.
Well, one thing about David that I always noticed, that he was serious about, I don't know how you would say it. Like,
yeah, I read that book, y'all, and I read the book. I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna date nobody. I'm not gonna flirt with girls. Like, she's gonna be my sister. I'm gonna treat her like a sister.
Like, not seeing women the way that we're used to guys, just objectifying and gawking over them, or and just honoring me that way, basically. And I know men are visual, but that's one thing I know about David, is that he's going to make you feel uncomfortable with him before you can even feel as though he's flirting with you. And so many guys are not able to do that, but I love that about him, is that he has integrity and a man who has character, and he was doing that when he was a teenager. So that's possible for guys to be able to look at women in a loving way and not in a derogatory way. And women, those guys are out there that are able to appreciate you and to be honorable towards you, because that's what we deserve as women and as what we call each other in church, sisters and brothers. But I mean, that is possible.
And I think that's the part where it's like, just how do we see the opposite sex? Like, how do I see them? And if I'm a dude and I'm following 1,000 people, 1,000 women on Instagram who are just like models or like video vixens, or, you know, like whatever, social media superstars, because, you know, all they do is show their stuff off, then if you constantly have that in front of your face, then it's going to be really, really hard for when a woman walks by you to like not think about, look at her in the same way you've been looking at your phone. It's impossible. Like, it's impossible. Yeah. Because what happens, and this is something that I've had to walk through, is like when you do that, then there's a mentality that comes in your mind. There's even a physiological thing that happens. There's a hormone that's secreted in your brain that says, do this when you see that. And so if you're constantly, like, have you ever just noticed how you pull your phone out and like when no one's talking, then you'll just be like, and you don't even think about it. You're just like, man, I ain't even really looking at anything. I'm just like, you know. And when you do that, but then in the same way you do that by habit, when you force yourself to look at images and images and images that are not real, that have been photoshopped, that have been tanned, that have been faked, that have been things that have been like, it's not reality, then when a girl walks by, like you're like, okay, yeah, yeah. You're thinking it's like that image, like yeah, yeah, yeah. And like women aren't like that. And I'll even throw guys, cause it's the same thing with girls too. Like it ain't like that. Like that's not reality, yo. Like that's the internet, yo. Like that's not real. But the challenge then comes, how do I see the opposite sex? And one of the things that I tried to do when I was younger was say, okay, I'm really gonna like just see this girl as a sister, just as a sister, as a sister. And then what starts to happen, if you're guys and you start to live your life that way, other dudes will respect that about you. Like dudes that could never do that, they'll respect you. Like, yo, I see you. That's admirable what you do. I used to get that all the time when I was walking around campus. They knew I wasn't the dude that was out there, I'd say it differently if I was with some guys, but I was not that dude. And it's just by habit. It's just habit. You just say, okay, like when a girl walks by, all right, praise God. No, but you like, okay. But when you like, and you give that second look, like the Bible says this, he's like, when you even look on a woman with lust, meaning you're like visualizing, and or women, like, man, I wish he would, them, the little side joints, all that happens, the Bible says, even if you look on someone with lust, you've already sinned. Yeah. And so what we got to do is, number one, tear down some of the images and then change our perspective. And so that's possible. And that's very possible, but it takes habit. It's discipline. It's a discipline thing, in my opinion. Let's take another question. Is it possible to fall out of love with a person? Y'all be listening to a lot of music.
Yeah.
Is it possible to fall out of love with someone, babe?
Fall out of love? I guess I would need to know, what do you even think you're in love? And I don't know how.
How many people have been in a relationship, a dating relationship before? Okay, cool. Yeah, is it possible? I mean, yeah, it is. It is possible, because the other thing, like the sense of being in love is a physical thing as well. There's a neurological thing that goes on where you don't see, you're like numbed to like reality of what's in front of you. So you'll do things you never thought were normal because it's a physiological thing as well. But there's room for that. That's the eros love we call the romantic love. Mm-hmm. But the type of love that does never fail is what's called agape, is what the Bible talks about, and that's the unconditional love. And so, like, if you've ever been in love, you're like, yo, this girl is driving me crazy. Like, oh my gosh, I love this girl. I do anything for you, girl. Or baby, I do everything for you. Or fellas or ladies, if you're like, what would the lady say in that? If she was just like gone, what would she say? She just giggle like that.
No, you just can't. I can't wait for him to text me again. I can't wait till we're together. We want that relationship. We just want to be with him.
Right. It's like it's all whatever. So all that happens, but then he does something to like hurt you. Like he
calls
takes
me fat. We just like, oh, I don't love him like that no more. Or
like he doesn't text you that day. Like, yeah, exactly. Like
it just becomes a real surface stuff.
Yeah, it's just
nothing
like
serious.
It's like, well, now you're not in love with them anymore, Well, you probably don't feel that romantic expression to them, but what the Bible calls us to is, for the person that you're supposed to be with, it's agape. It's unconditional love. It's love that's not based on how good they are or what they do. It's unconditional love based on the love of God that you have for someone, and that's the kind of love that He brings. But it's hard to have that kind of love for somebody when you're 15.
Yeah, I think because a lot of things are based on feelings, and that's why I said, it was kind of hard to answer it at first, because if you're saying that you love everyone that you've been with, like, I'm in love with him, y'all break up 5 months later, it's like, I'm in love with this guy, then you might want to evaluate like love to you. Like it's somebody making you feel good about yourself all the time isn't love. it's because it's just based on how up and down your feelings are.
Let's talk about this. Let's get into the good stuff. Do you think sex is a necessity in a relationship? Do you think sex is a necessity in a relationship? And we got a couple different questions like that. So I do. I absolutely do. I think it's a necessity in a relationship, especially and exclusively a marriage relationship. Absolutely. Like, absolutely, it is necessary. It is. Not a necessity is low key. It's like it's a must. It's a definite. It's a this ain't it if it ain't that. It's absolutely in a marriage relationship.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Any other relationship is drama and baggage.
Yeah.
Does that solve that? Okay, so
It's
simple as that. Like any other outside of a marriage is drama and baggage.
Because the point of it is to produce something. God, He doesn't give you something just for us to have as a selfish thing. It's not. Sex is not for me just to have to enjoy for myself because it makes Lydia feel good. He tells us, He gives us that to produce something. So out of that produces life. So when we have so many young girls that are getting pregnant, and yes, sex is a necessity like God tells us to, but in the context with outside of marriage, well, then that's why we're dealing with all the negative parts when it's done the wrong way. So we have girls who are stressed out because they're trying to raise babies by themselves. Fatherlessness, mothers going crazy. Those things are not supposed to happen by yourself. Those things are supposed to be done with two people, whereas if we procreate and we produce life through this good thing, as God calls sex good, then we are raising another child or a human being within the context that God originated it to be. So the drama, when there's chaos, that's not what God set it up for. God didn't set up for you to raise children by yourself. And so that's when that was all built on what we wanted. So He's going to give us what we wanted, and then we're going to have to deal with it with the consequence.
And I mean, like you said, I wasn't a virgin when I got married.
Yeah, neither was I.
But we know now, like, if there's, we always talk about like how are we going to talk to our kids about relationships and sex and stuff, and it's just like, man, like I wish 1,000 times over that that could change, because it would save us drama that we've had to walk through. You know what I mean? Like married, like drama. You know what I mean? So
yeah, because even though, like David said, we were meant to be with one another, but because of those things, we still had to deal with that with the two of us. So
yeah, it's definitely a necessity in marriage. Absolutely, that's it. This has been incredible, you guys. We're gonna wrap it up right here. I wanna say that before, like I said, if you have any other questions, we don't even get through we only got through a couple, so we're gonna talk about this more. Lydia and myself will be here afterwards to kind of answer your questions. But thank you guys so much. Let's make some noise for the fact that you guys do it.